Justin, you think he should drop Marvin Jones?
Defund Marvin Jones. He's stealing from the league at this point. Don't make no sense.
We're going to provide you, since we know what we're talking about, with some insight about every matchup that's going on in Week 7. Bengals.
Bro, first matchup should be the Eagles versus the Giants on Thursday. 25 points Week 4 and 28 points Week 6, as I was saying. But go ahead, Brian.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Indecision Cave. We're in the middle of Week 7, and that was just one of our co-hosts, Joseph Hall, ranting about his starting quarterback. Joe, before we go anywhere else, you have anything else that you want to say about your boy?
No, I'm good. I just had to finish my statement. Just because you're the host doesn't mean you can cut me off. But go ahead.
No one was cutting you off, Joe. He had one good week. It happened to be against me.
Ryan, what's a good week for a quarterback?
I don't know. You tell me, Joe. With you talking about the MVP. You tell me what that number looks like.
He's had three.
Okay, with a week 1 of 27 points, would that be a good week?
Yep.
With a week 4 performance of 25 points, would that be a good week?
Yep.
With a week 6 of 28 points, be a good week.
All right, so he's had 3 good weeks out of 7. Congratulations, your franchise player is good less than half of the time. Ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to the Indecision Cave. Justin, one of our other co-hosts, man, how you feeling today?
Good, man. We're back at it Wednesday, starting over.
Justin, we spoke about it earlier in the week, man. It was getting down to the nitty-gritty. You versus Banks playing for the winning, for the first place in the entire league. How did it play out?
I mean, I took the L, man. I had to eat that one. That was my fault. It was bad management on my part. I lost by 10.1 points. I had 10.7 left on the bench, and Randall Cobb that I didn't play. I didn't expect John Brown to have 0 points on a Monday night game. That kind of threw me off. But I went down swinging, so I had a chance up until CeeDee Lamb started getting looks. So
That's starting John Brown.
That's an interesting segue to something that we'll talk about a little bit later, because something we've added within the Indecision Cave is a Coach of the Year rankings. And so that's sort of what plays into it, is a decision where you kind of play someone who gets a 0. There was 10.7 points to be had. We kind of look at maximizing numbers and determine who's the Coach of the Year. And that's probably a decision that will definitely hold you back a little bit. Ashton, how are you, my man? Kamish, how's it going?
Yo, my team is still trash, but I'm just going to shout out that Eugene and Mahan played last week, and so I'm interested to see what junk Mahan's going to talk about. So Eugene's first show is upon his loss.
Yeah.
First up I have.
Yeah. And so a face that we've seen a bunch of times, he's back. He's got Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram in his background. Mahan, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing all right, for having the most points in the league so far. I'd like to think I typically have a better record than 3-3, but I guess we can't be all Eugene. We can't all be Eugene in past seasons.
Bringing us to the man, the myth, the legend for the first time, ladies and gentlemen. We teased it early in the week, but here he is, Eugene Morton, man. How are you, sir?
I'm great, man. I'm happy to be here. I'm not sure what Mahomes means by what he just said, but I'm 3-3 as well, and I'm not too upset about it, given how the league started, to be honest.
How exactly did it start?
Roster mismanagement, leaving 60 total points on my bench 2 weeks in a row, starting someone you guys were talking about in the last episode, or one of the last episodes, Marvin Jones. It didn't start the best, but I snagged some clutch wins. I lost a tough one against you, Jess. I was upset, man. It hurt. I thought I would pull that out against you, bro. I won't lie. But as long as I beat Ashton, you know what I mean? I got some bragging rights, I feel.
There you go. Eugene, we started off our season and started off our tenure as a show talking about some, dare we say, mismanagement with the trade happenings. And so Justin spoke his piece. We had John Bellamy on here to speak his piece. But 2 years ago, you were involved in a very controversial trade
Buckle myself in.
Yeah, buckle yourself in, man. You're here. You're here. First episode right away. We're gonna hit you over the head with it, man. What made you feel like Ezekiel Elliott for Marlon Mack and AJ Green was a good deal? Like, we've gone through all the intricacies, we've talked about it, but like, having been the person who gave up Zeke, like, what was going on? Talk us through it, please.
You guys like to frame it as collusion. From my perspective, my wide receivers have been letting me down all season, similar to now. My running back game was tied up. We were doing great, but my wide receivers could not maintain output. Somebody who I wasn't able to grab off the rosters, or I think I might have been in trade talks about him, who have just been ripping off 18, 22-yard games or 22-point games for, 4 or 5 weeks in a row, Marlon Mack. I'm just like, damn. AJ Green was coming back. I think I was a little too high on AJ Green's return and thinking that he would get like reacclimated into the offense and whatnot. I overshot on AJ. In my mind, in a perfect world, I feel like if I would have got them both at maximum output with Marlon Mack, with what he was doing, that it would have been a decent return. Almost that it would kind of hurt John on the wide receiver end, but AJ Green came back and did squat, so it made it look like funny business. Just a bad gamble.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we've discussed on the show a little bit, and you can again help us piece this together a little bit, was it sort of looked like you were at a point in the season where maybe your playoff hopes were kind of already gone, right? Like anything can happen. Anything can happen. But what made you in that moment blow it up, right? Like it was you had no chance, it felt. And to make that kind of a move to impact the league is, I think, what drove Justin so crazy.
From my perspective, I wasn't blowing up my team. From my perspective, AJ Green coming back from an injury, fresh, I'm just thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna eat that up. The biggest hole in my team at the time was wideout. So I'm thinking I could shore that hole up and maintain. I'm gonna get 70% of what Zeke is and gain 100% of what AJ Green is. He just came back at 30% of himself, so I didn't get much of what I thought. So I didn't look at it like I was blowing up my team. I looked at it like I was gaining a portion of my running back and making who I thought would have been my wide receiver 1 at the time, my wide receiver 2 or flex.
There you have it. Now the good part about this is that we've gone through all the collusion from Joe and Mo to you.
Oh, that's true collusion, though. That's actual collusion, what they do. What they do down there?
Have you been watching all the episodes?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, well, you might have missed the segment where Ryan actually ceded that the trade wasn't that bad. But now he's going back on his original
he
thought.
walked it back a little.
So yeah, so maybe Ryan he himself needs to rewatch that episode. But please continue.
No, it's not about walking it back. I'm talking to our fans about all of the sketchy trades that have been made within this league. That's all I was discussing. So you versus Mo, once you guys get below like the Mason-Dixie line, you guys are acting real crazy down there. So you do your thing. But then we also had the Banks Eugene trade that impacted Justin. Justin got the all-time most wins in league history, had a real chance at winning a championship, and that blew it up for him. So we wanted to make sure he felt like he got all the clarification that he needed. Justin, are you good?
He has to know. I would never do my dog like that.
I'm going to just let it go, man. I know Eugene is solid. Everybody had their moments, man. So, but we in 2020. Whatever happened already happened. I'm at peace with it finally.
So, Ashton, you got anything you want to add to this, my man?
No, man. I'm good. I ended up losing anyways. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Understandably so. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've introduced our 12th and final league mate, Eugene, and we hope that when we come back from this commercial break, he sticks around to talk with you and with us about all of the matchups in the NFL Week 7 in the Indecision Cave. Welcome back to the Indecision Cave, ladies and gentlemen. And tonight we're going to do things a little bit differently. If you've tuned into our show for the first 7 weeks of the season, right about now is when we have 2 guests, 2 of our league mates come on and talk about the matchup of the week. But this week, We're going to take a break from that. We're going to take this show in a different direction where we're going to provide you, since we know what we're talking about, with some insight about every matchup that's going on in Week 7. And so we're gonna say the game, and then everybody's gonna give their input on what they like, who they're watching, who's a fantasy start, sit, those kind of things. Anything that these guys like or dislike about the matchup. So Joe, we're gonna come to you first, and our first matchup is the Browns versus the Bengals.
Bro, first matchup should be the Eagles versus the Giants on Thursday.
We can do the Eagles versus the Giants on Thursday, Joe.
Yeah, especially if you're gonna come to me first. I know my team.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I know my team. Yes, sir. Sorry about that, host.
No, do your thing, man.
Sorry about that. The Eagles versus the Giants, Thursday Night Football. So by the time this episode airs, the game will be over. I predict that the Eagles will probably win, I would say 24-14 is my prediction. I think our D-line is going to perform very well against the Giants O-line. We do well against the run as well. Freeman, I know he's been doing pretty okay, but if he is the one we're worried about at running back, I'm not scared at all. And I think we're actually getting better on our offensive line with Jordan Mailata, who is a 7th-round pick. As I said before, he played rugby before he got drafted, so he never played football. He held pretty well against, Calais Campbell from the Ravens in his second NFL start. So I think even though our starters are banged up with him filling in and doing as well as he has against All-Stars, I just like our chances.
Ashton, keeping with the Eagles thoughts, man. Anything that we missed? Anyone else that we should be focused on from your perspective?
Yeah, man, I think we can't take the Giants' defense for granted. Honestly, just from like a fantasy perspective, their defenses produced more points than the Eagles' defense. So, strangely enough, the Giants, from a defensive standpoint, is doing well. They have 15 sacks, 4 interceptions on the year. James Bradbury is looking like a shutdown corner. And with him probably shadowing Travis, I don't see him needing to shadow Deshaun. It makes it a little bit harder, especially without having Zach Ertz. So our starting tenant is Richard Rodgers. I think it's going to be a close game. Once again, I think we just have more talent across the board from an offense and defense perspective, which is why I have us winning. But I definitely think it's going to be a lot harder of a game than most might think. It's the NFC least, so.
Definitely the least. Eugene, we know that you're an Eagles fan, man. We want to get your chops going, man. What are you thinking about this game?
I think we win by 6. I'd say 30-24. Unlike Joe, I think you got to give a little more respect to – I don't think Freeman will kill us on the yardage perspective. I'd cap him out maybe 80 if he has a great day. But I do think somehow, some way, they get a short field, and he might punch it in twice. He might stumble into the end zone once or catch one out of the backfield once. And Slayton just has a knack for catching wild passes in the back of the end zone sometimes. And truth be told, you don't know what to expect from our division, and divisional games just go a little left sometimes. So, I mean, with those things said, I think we have the better quarterback. I'm a little skeptical on Boston Scott. I've been giving some thought to picking him up in another league of mine, but I'm not 100% sure if I want to drop someone else who may give me, a consistent whatever it is, and then for him to underperform in this game, and then Miles come back and I don't get nothing out of him.
Who were your options to potentially drop for Scott as a potential fill-in starting running back?
In that league, Joshua Kelly's one. Devontae Freeman is one. If I had to drop someone,
right.
Marvin Jones is on that team as well, and I believe it was Keelan Cole. Marvin Jones is gonna let me down, man. It's terrible. It feels very bad. I want to share that with everyone who sees it.
Justin, you think he should drop Marvin Jones?
Defund Marvin Jones. He's stealing from the league at this point. It don't make no sense.
The week that I do, he's gonna go for 2 and 111, and I'm gonna pull my hair out, bro.
Well, they play Atlanta this week, so don't do it this week.
Yeah. I mean, he'll do that, and then that's it.
But I'm gonna lose by the exact amount of points that he put up. It's just how it goes sometimes.
No, but I share your sentiments in Boston, Scott. I don't think he's going to do much, to be honest.
Yeah. You know, he could take a screen to the house. You know what I mean? Like, Foster could do some wild things, or he might just have 3 screens in the game that go for 20 yards and puts him at 17 points, and you're like, oh, man, I could have started him over my flex, but I'm not sold.
I hear you. Mahan, everybody's high on the Eagles this week. You know, we don't really need a score, just who on the Giants might perform well in this matchup, knowing that the Eagles got a nice front seven, that kind of thing.
I'd say more than anything, Evan Ingram. Philly's been susceptible against Titans this year. Evan Ingram over the last few years really hasn't performed up to the expectations he was hyped out to be. But, you know, this could very well be his week. Darius Slayton is nursing a foot injury, but, you know, dependent just on the situation. He, like Eugene said, like, Darius Slayton is a deep threat with an aptitude for just catching wild passes out of the back of the end zone. So, this week, I'm definitely eyeing Slayton and Evan Ingram. Philly and New York is going to be the battle of 2 very short-handed offenses. So it might be like a 13-16 game. It's going to end up being defensive slugfest for sure.
Perfect. Got it.
Just a quick note. This might be the first time the Giants have, outside of Saquon Barkley, all of their receiving options. I believe Sterling Shepard returned to practice today and might be able to play Thursday. So you'll have Sterling, Tate, Slayton, and Ingram. So outside of
the you have Dallas back?
He hasn't come back from IR, no. Richard Rodgers it is.
Great.
Perfect. There we go. That's exactly what we want. Give the fans what they need with these matchups. The next one we're going to hit on is the Browns versus the Bengals. Ashton, any thoughts on that matchup?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Browns versus Bengals. Do you have any
I
thoughts?
was just seeing if I found news on Dallas Goedert. Browns versus Bengals. I expect to see Joe Burrow continue to use his receivers. It looks like he was finally able to connect well with AJ Green last week, and that doesn't bode well for Cleveland's secondary, which is struggling this season. So you have a AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, right? You have that type of lineup there. It's going to cause problems. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and we don't know how Baker is looking from an injury perspective. Him and Odell don't seem to be on the same page all the time. We've seen that they do well against bad defenses. And so we'll see how they kind of bold in this game. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. Shockingly enough, I see Cincinnati taking the dub. I don't know, just very talented receiving core. Joe Burrow likes to throw it, and he's showing that he was worth the top pick. So it's going to be a battle once again, division battle. So it's going to be tough. I think Cleveland's coming off of a loss, and it looks like it's hitting them hard, right? People are talking about they're not that good and they're 4-2, right? And so we just have to see. But Baker doesn't look good. Odell doesn't seem on the same page. Kareem Hunt didn't look good last week. So they're probably going to come and give it their best shot. But I just think Joe Burrow has way too much talent in that receiving group for Cleveland to uphold. Yeah.
Justin, any thoughts on Browns-Bengals?
It's going to be an ugly game. I do feel like there'll be somewhat of a bounce back with Cleveland, just off of their showing from last week. There's discussions with Baker's efficiency, his longevity. Is he the guy that they need for that franchise going forward? So as a football player, he has to fight back with his back against the ropes. But Cincinnati, they got a nice setup. The way that they lost last week, I feel like they'll be coming out for vengeance. Division game, you never know what could happen, but I feel like Cincinnati should pull that off.
There we go. Justin, we're going to stick with you. We're going to switch up the game. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off a big win. People are hype about their defense. They did what they had to do, nationally televised game. They're taking on the Raiders. Any thoughts on that matchup, Tampa Bay versus the Raiders?
The only thing I'm worried about is Gronk in Vegas. But outside of that, Sunday night game, I feel like we should keep our momentum going forward. Shout out to our new acquisition from the Jets. They having like a little flash sale, so we got a D tackle to replace our injury this year. So happy about that.
Who's your
I
guy?
like how McClendon from the Jets.
Mm.
So got him for a 6th-round pick last week. Very random. I'll take it. I guess, Todd Bowles, he still got connections out there, so he made something work. I like our linebacking core. We're looking to sync. If our secondary could play like that and we could keep the rush going, I'm not worried about next week. So, and of course, Gronk, he shows spurts. To me, I feel like Gronk will show probably like three or four more games like that where he'll have over 70 yards receiving and a touchdown. I don't know what 4 games, but he got 4 more games of that in him. I like our rookie receiver, Ty Johnson. He got in the end zone finally. I like him better than Scotty. So I feel like he should be starting, but I'll just wait and see how that goes. But, yeah, I like our chances. I feel like we should get the win Sunday night. Everybody's watching.
Would you consider Gronk a must start? Is he kind of like a tight end that you set and forget, or do you think last week was an anomaly and probably game scripted?
I wouldn't say set and forget, but like I said, Gronk has 4 more of those type of games. I just don't know which 4. Given they're playing in Vegas late Sunday night, I would take the chance and play.
Joe, something that's clear about the Raiders defense this year is that they're pretty porous when it comes to defending the run. We saw Ronald Jones really break out last week against the Packers. I think he had more than 25 fantasy points. I mean, the first touchdown was on like a 1-yard run, so that's that's a quarter of his points or whatever. But in general, he played very well. When you're facing this Raiders defense that is not strong against the run, do you think that this is a big game for Jones, or in some way do they give the Keyshawn Vaughn, the Leonard Fournette, everybody gets some love and you temper expectations?
From some of the footage that I've seen with Jones running, like he's finding the right holes, pause or not pause, I don't know. But he looks like he has good vision. I just think he's going to have another solid game, and I'm not ready to trust a Fournette start until I see it for at least 2 games consecutively, because to Breakinton Jones playing time as good as he's running right now, probably not likely.
And just to add some stats, the Raiders are ranked 3rd against running backs. They've allowed an average of 26.6 points to running backs.
There you go. Joe, we're going to keep it with you. We're moving on to the Bears versus the Rams. And you're the owner of David Montgomery. Tarek Cohen, torn ACL, right? You're reaping the benefits of the Montgomery thing. How's he treating you, and how do you expect him to perform this week against the Rams? I'm sorry, Joe. A team that hasn't allowed a running back to score since week 2, according to our stats and according to our statistician.
Yeah, quick side street. This is a testament that you should try to pay attention to as many teams and players as you can, because I notice as we're going down these matchups, like I know a lot more about the Bears and Rams because I have a player on each side. And I found that when I'm about to start a trade, talks with someone, they're like, how about so-and-so player? I'm like, you know what? I'm not tracking them that much, so I have to go to the research mode. So it's good to try to keep tabs on everybody as much as you possibly can. So I did actually bench, or at least right now I'm planning to bench Robert Woods, because he should be going against, is it Will Fuller? No, what's Fuller's first name?
Kyle.
Kyle Fuller?
Yeah.
Okay, he's a legit corner from the Bears, and typically the best corners face against Robert Woods versus Cooper Kupp, because he's in the slot, and Reynolds, he's not nearly as good as Woods. So if you can bench Woods, I would. I'm also saying that the Bears have only allowed one touchdown to wide receivers all year, and only won 20+ fantasy points to a receiver all year. It's a good sample size given what week we're in right now. Now Montgomery on the ground, he's not killing it. I would blame a lot of that on the offensive line. They're not giving him many holes to run through, but he's catching a good amount of passes in the backfield. So I would start him with confidence. Did I answer all your questions concerning that matchup?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, awesome. Eugene, any thoughts on Rams versus Bears?
Yeah, I think clash of two unique coaches, guys who bring a lot of different stuff to the game, so to speak. I feel like a part of me thinks Chicago could upset the Rams and Montgomery have his first confident, really good day to make his owner feel good this season. But then a part of me thinks that although they've only allowed one touchdown all season to wide receivers, that Jared Goff throws for 3, 2 go to Cooper Kupp, and maybe Robert Woods pulls a new Chase Claypool and scores with a handoff. I think ultimately I feel like the Rams will take it, maybe by 10, give or take. I'm curious to see what happens to Cam Akers, though. I'm not sure why they're not. I know it's post-injury, but I thought the Henderson show has been over by now.
Right. I honestly thought they were going to cycle through them a little bit more equally, but it seems
like
as though
it's difficult to do.
Right.
In real game situations, especially if you're not like imposing your will on somebody and driving them go the way that you want them to go, so you can't start this, you can't play.
And they all have looked good in different games and different opportunities. It's like none of them are, a Todd Gurley name, at least in his heyday. But they're I think I was watching one of the Rams games, and they changed their whole run blocking scheme. What is it, to a zone? I'm not too familiar with the techniques of run blocking, but they switched it up since last year, and it seems to be working for them.
Mahan, you might be the one to speak to it, Mahan. Being an owner of Darrell Henderson, do you feel confident playing him this week, or how do you feel about the Rams' backfield in general?
I think the Rams' backfield, Henderson has had a better hold on it than I initially perspective. I'm somebody who, spent fairly big on Darrell Henderson based on his, previous performances, and then he put up 4.7 points against the Giants, 8 carries, 21 yards. It just didn't look good. I saw with it, he's had at least 14 carries the following 2 weeks. Just because of how good the Bears defense is. I know they're kind of more towards the middle of the road as a run defense than they are as a pass defense. But Darrell Henderson isn't somebody that I'm really starting with confidence. If there's any injuries in my lineup, he's definitely somebody that I'd look at to put in my starting lineup, but not necessarily with confidence. I do think that maybe later in the season we could see Akers and Brown cycle in, but Henderson's handling a bigger workload at this point in the season than I think anybody would have predicted.
I think context to Mahan's question on do you start Darrell Henderson, let the people at home know who your 2 current running backs are and why you wouldn't start them.
My 3 running backs are Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and the recently broken out DeAndre Swift.
Right. And so you look at other teams, you look at Darrell Henderson, he had a total of like 75.4 points, 3 rushing touchdowns, 350 yards. No, is it 350? 348. So, I mean, the dude's balling. It's just a really boomer bust, but consistent, I guess.
I have 6 running backs. That's crazy.
Boomer bust, yet consistent. Darrell Henderson. That's what we like to hear. Justin, we're coming to you for Chargers-Jags talk, because we know you love Justin Herbert, man. But in general, what do you like or not like about this matchup fantasy-wise?
I don't like defenses in this matchup because neither of them can stop offenses as we've seen over this season. So I expect this to be somewhat of a shootout, surprisingly. The Justins, Herbert, Jackson, they're going to show up. Somehow with the Jaguars, they'll find a way to get those touchdowns. And Keenan Cole, he's been putting up a show as we saw last week. James Robinson came through in the clutch, receiving touchdown last week. So, I expect some type of a shootout. Very entertaining game.
Ashton, the Chargers are allowing the 4th most yards per game, generally speaking. So if the Jaguars kind of keep on this trend, who do you think might be the big beneficiary or the guy to play from the Jags offense this week?
Well, are you talking about total yards through the air or on the ground?
How about you just educate us on whatever you think would be the best person to play, bud?
Okay. So we're talking about the Chargers, right? Just give me a sec here. Just trying to look through. So the Chargers, very stingy against the run. What I'm seeing here is 14.9. So my continued stock down on James Robinson of that Jaguars backfield. I think he's one person that you don't see do what people are expecting to do based on his earlier performance. I think from a receiving standpoint, they're 21st, so they're giving away 22.1. So you're going to see Shark. You're going to see the rookie. I can't pronounce his last name. So you're going to see Shark. You're going to see the rookie. You're going to see Keelan Cole. You're going to see them do a good amount of damage to that Chargers secondary. Just from a owner of Keelan Cole, who's been very up and down. He's had actually the most targets on the Jaguars team, strangely enough, but doesn't produce as much as the other two. Obviously, he's their third receiver, but I think they all respectively get their share of targets. I think this might be a game. I don't know who is in Los Angeles. Is Chris Harris there? No, it's not Chris Harris. No, is he there? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking at the rookie and maybe Keelan Cole. I think they might be the ones to kind of benefit from not having Chris Harris Jr. shadow them. And I feel like Shark might get that assignment. So that's just my thoughts.
Laviska Shenault, if you ever tune into the Indecision Cave, man, we do know your name. We do appreciate you. Ashton loves you. He says you're going to ball out. He knows it. I'm not gonna butcher the young blood's name, so I'll let you do that. Go ahead. Say it one more time. Let the fans hear it again.
Straight out of Colorado.
Yeah, straight out of Colorado. Laviska Shenault. We're gonna move on to the Falcons versus the Lions. And interestingly enough, Joe, you allowed for Matt Ryan to be played against you. He puts up big numbers. But just generally speaking, Falcons offense, man, do you think that even if the record doesn't turn around, are they at a point where all of these guys are must starts? You got to get them all in the game, and even Matt Ryan?
You know what? Let me flip it back to you real quick because I know we haven't got to ask you many questions. I saw some crazy stat about Gurley. How many times did he rush? Because I know he's on your team. Last week it was like 22 or 23 times for how many yards?
40.
What was that, Eugene?
I think I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, no, he's not getting the yards that you would want, but he's definitely getting the totes and he's getting the points that you need out of him. I think in general, it's time where the 3 guys that are on the Falcons offense, you got to start them every week. Julio Jones just comes back and he and Matt Ryan are they're inseparable, right? Like they have a connection. So when he's out there, you got to play him, and we're assuming that his hamstring's back to full health. So I don't think there's any reason to not play Julio Jones.
Oh, I think today he had a limited, or he didn't have a practice at all for that hamstring.
Tread light with that hammy.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it's just more of a precautionary thing. I think he's still playing Sunday.
Probably, but that might linger all season.
to Ryan's point, though, Todd Gurley gets into the end zone, and I think that's what keeps him relevant. With 5 touches on the year, I think he's maybe second or third. So he's getting into the end zone. He might not get you the yards, but as a fantasy guy, you want him to get in the end zone, catch some passes. And so that's what keeps Todd Gurley relevant.
Okay. On that same subject, Ryan, I'm wondering on your thoughts of how you view Gurley rest of season. Would you rather have James Robinson or Todd Gurley?
I think I'd still rather have Todd Gurley, and this is why. James Robinson.
Oh, bro, I was about to go down a list.
I'm of what?
Of running backs. Quick list.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
David Johnson or Todd Gurley?
Todd Gurley.
Miles Gaskins or Todd Gurley?
Todd Gurley.
Ronald Jones or Todd Gurley?
Ronald Jones.
Okay, so we found our first one. Jonathan Taylor or Todd Gurley?
Todd Gurley.
James Conner or Todd Gurley?
James Conner.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to see where your assessment, because I'm sure you're following him closely, but I just wanted to see.
Is it crazy that Ronald Jones has more receptions than Todd Gurley? How crazy is that?
Nah, with his quarterback, it's not crazy.
Like, that's insane. Like, Todd Gurley would be like that dual threat, right? Like, he can run, he can catch. That's what helped him win my championship. Like, that's the year that Todd Gurley went off, was when
championship plug. Go ahead.
Yeah. I bought his jersey too. Good looks, Todd.
I did think Atlanta was going to throw him the ball more.
Yeah, like, he's only had 11 receptions on the year. Like, you would assume he would get more, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's been
so
I don't know if I would necessarily have ever said that, because the Falcons offense is one that's push, and they happen to Julio's been a little bit down, but Calvin Ridley's more than made up for that in that regard. And when they're both on the field, like, they're just able to go vertical, right? And I'm not talking like 50 yards vertical. I'm just saying, like, they don't need to do necessarily the check down thing. Tom Brady, as great as he is, or all that stuff, right? Like, he made Danny Woodhead who he was. He's made James White who he is. He likes doing that. So even with great wide receivers like Chris Godwin, and with Mike Evans, and with Rob Gronkowski, like, he still, when things get in his face, he knows where his check downs are. And so Ashton won his championship with Todd Gurley playing a role in the passing offense. So I'm not going to say he's not that guy. Obviously he is, but I just look at certain systems as adhering to certain skill sets. And so that's why I was kind of leaning that. I'll have to ask the producer to kind of rewind it at some point in time. But I think every person that I chose Gurley to be better than was based solely on their offense, right? Like, Jonathan Taylor might be a better option than him right now, hypothetically, or whatever. But when Jonathan Taylor's their number one option kind of thing, you go to Gurley because they got to respect the pass, so Gurley's going to get to run. You know that in the goal line, he's going to get the carries. You know that if they do check down, he's going to get the love. When defenses have to focus on Jonathan Taylor, it's a wrap for him. I chose James Conner for the exact same reason. I know Juju's playing a little bit down, but when you got Deontay Johnson, Claypool, James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, Eric Ebron, and Ben Roethlisberger liking to move the ball up and down the field, it makes Conner's role something that you can't exactly plan for from a defensive perspective, making his value fantasy-wise important to me. Shout out to Eugene, first-round pick.
You would assume, right, in Atlanta, like, Kyle Shanahan had that team in the Super Bowl because they used their backs at some extent. Like, Tevin Coleman was used out of the backfield, so they had that dump. And you see, like, Tampa Bay doing that. And obviously, when you want to look at, like, how do you stay successful and continue to place yourself in contention for a Super Bowl, you look at Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and, like, you would think, right, that, like, hey, we have a running back that can catch the ball at the backfield and 3 amazing receivers and a good tight end. Like, let's spread out the field. And they just consistently just drop the ball on that. I mean, it's perplexing. But a good note is that when Julio does play, Julio plays well, Calvin Ridley plays well, and Russell Gage plays well. So, I mean, they don't need to throw the ball to the running back, but it makes it easier, right?
Right. And to close out this particular matchup, I guess the Lions they're averaging 20 points to the quarterback position. So obviously what you saw with Matt Ryan, what he did to my team last week is he put up, over 30 points. So you could start him with confidence.
And just a last little tidbit, the Falcons do have Dirk Carter calling the plays, and from when he was on Tampa Bay, I didn't really like his play selection, so there's that.
Mahan, I want to wrap this segment or this game up with your thoughts on the running back situation in Detroit. You know, you just sort of faded Darrell Henderson a little bit, due in large part to DeAndre Swift sort of coming out party last week. He finally gets the love. He shows that he can be the guy out there in Detroit. Do you feel confident in him, or any reason to second guess?
Well, Detroit's not going to run the ball 35 plus times a game like they did last week. It was just a very beneficial matchup with the Jaguars, but the Falcons are horrible against the pass. DeAndre Swift was drafted to be a pass catching back and definitely has the most upside out of anybody in that line's backfield, and that's speaking to someone who also has Adrian Peterson on his team. So I'm starting DeAndre Swift with confidence, and Kenny Galladay any week is a must start, but especially against the Falcons pass defense, he's definitely somebody that I project to put at least up 20 points this week.
Awesome. And Mahan, we're going to stick with you. People can see that background, so they know who we're talking about next. Maybe the real matchup of the week. We got two undefeated teams as the Titans square off with the Steelers. You have Derrick Henry. He's your keeper. Talk to us about what you think he's going to do and anyone else you might have interest in with this Steelers-Titans matchup.
All right.
Question.
So,
do you fade Juju? Yes or no?
Juju's someone, and this is something that I've read from multiple analysts. Juju's not somebody that's a must start anymore, at least in my opinion.
And it's just weird how he continues to get drafted.
In our collective opinion, he is not a must start. No, he's not.
Yeah,
you want him to be.
Right.
You want to set it and forget it with Juju, but that's just not the case. I don't know what to attribute it to. Deontay Johnson has been hurt for a lot of games. You think he would just reap the benefits. I don't know what to do with that, man.
Sounds like Marvin Jones all over again.
Oh,
maybe AB was right for once. Maybe AB was right just this one time when he said that Juju just isn't that good. Maybe he was right.
But
who knows?
Juju is good.
Juju's good. It's just it's been something. I remember seeing a meme of like Juju dancing on the Heinz field after the game, and somebody said, "I know damn well this man is dancing on the field to give me 3 fantasy points."
Like I think Juju's his name gives him clout, but his production doesn't give you the same thing his name has, right? Like he's arguably right now the third best receiver from a production standpoint on his team as a receiver number 1.
But the Seahawks are also just very good at drafting receivers, so they can spread wherever.
I get that. They got the golden formula. They got the secret sauce, right? But it's just like
last 2 weeks last week against the Eagles, 4 receptions, 28 yards, 6.8 fantasy points. Last week against the Browns, 2 receptions, 6 yards, 2.6 fantasy points.
And the world on fire.
Mo is keeping him in the starting lineup. But looking at his bench, he may not have much of an option.
No. He has Christian Kirk on his bench, and they play Seattle. I hope he doesn't see this.
So you would start Kirk over Juju this week?
Absolutely. Seattle lets everyone catch the ball.
You're too loud.
Bring it down, action.
I mean, I'm just saying we don't have to put this in the chat, but I'm pretty sure I'm only going to watch this. But let's be very honest here, like Seattle allows deep balls, and Christian Kirk's a deep that's all he does. He's a deep route guy. We saw it last week. It just makes sense. Like Juju doesn't do anything, but you can't tell Mo, and I hope he doesn't start him because I dislike Mo fantasy-wise.
And he's facing our host this week, so of course
who's he playing?
Our host,
Mr. Marcel.
Mr. Marcel.
Wish me luck, guys.
Yo, Malcolm, just take this part out. When I start, just take it all out. All right, bro?
The whole thing.
Do a director's cut after this week.
Shout out to the producer. We're moving on to Chiefs Broncos. And interestingly enough, I'll start here because it directly impacts your boy. Le'Veon Bell should be in the lineup for the Chiefs. Guys, after last week, I am very, very, very confident that CEH has a high floor. I do believe that Le'Veon Bell is going to play a role, and I do believe he's going to have an impact. But I think that CEH is still going to be in that 14-point range on a weekly basis.
No doubt. No doubt. Completely
And
agree
so,
with
like,
that.
after watching his game, like, I'm not as I'm concerned because there was a point in time where he was getting all of the carries, sometimes losing like 5 to Darrell Williams. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell is going to get minimum of those 5, probably more. But I'm a lot less concerned than I was heading into last week. Am I bugging?
My only thought, if I was the CEH owner, I look at Justin's just freaking fantasy star Alvin Kamara. Like his ceiling is just ridiculous. The way he can win a week for you. With Le'Veon Bell joining, I don't know if you can look forward to CEH ever winning a week for you. And not to say that he has done that yet, but he's still rookie and is still integrating a new offense. But I just don't see that ceiling anymore with Bell once he joins.
No way, Joe.
So
You see. Let me quickly look at Kamara real quick, and I'm gonna point to some of the crazy games that he has, and of course I'm worried about him this week because I'm facing him this week. But Alvin Kamara has scored 38 points, 44 points. Like you see that in any type of wheelhouse in CEH rest of the season?
No, but I also don't think it's necessary for him to give you that if you kind of build your team the right way. But I think it comes down to, is Darrell Williams a productive player? Like objectively, not just for fantasy. Is he productive on the field?
Is who productive on the field?
The backup for Kansas City.
Yeah, he's
Yes, he is.
reliable. He has to play.
Is he objectively productive? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. Now we're going to replace him with Le'Veon Bell. I mean,
You don't see a good step up, like not just a little.
I don't think
step
Andy
up.
Reid's gonna OD and just screw up the timeshare like that. I think Le'Veon Bell's gonna get 10 opportunities, 12 opportunities, but I think CEH is still gonna do what he has been brought in there to do. I just think they're quick to draw something unique up, and Le'Veon's talented enough to capitalize in the open space.
I mean, I might disagree a little bit here. We saw in Philadelphia, right, when we had Brown, Westbrook, Buck Holtz, like we saw them kind of have like a pretty of course it may be like 70-30, 60-40, but like Andy Reid likes using his running backs. And the scary thing about CEH is he doesn't get in the end zone. He has one rushing touchdown on the year. Like that's what's scary about him. And then now you add a bigger back. Like I think CEH is 5'8". You add a 6'1" running back.
Is Bell 6'1"?
Yeah. And so you have a running back like that.
Originally, I'm speaking to Ryan's point that you could bet on. I feel very good in assuming that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to give me 14 to 16 points every week.
A good floor.
No matter what.
That's a fair assumption.
He's a solid RB2. I don't think he's ever going to be an RB1 this season, but a solid RB2 for sure. Yeah, I agree.
So when I'm looking at running backs, right, and in this league in particular, whatever, where there's Kamara, there's Zeke, there's
don't do that.
McCaffrey, right? Like these guys that you say can win you a week, so to speak, right? There are only so many of those guys in the NFL.
I'd say five, right? You have Kamara, Zeke, maybe Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, and I think Dalvin Cook is definitely one of those guys that can win you a week.
Ryan, I think I know where you're going, but my thought was – oh, okay, go ahead, Ryan.
No, so my point is that when all of these guys are sort of gone, you have to build your team in a way that allows you to still maximize your points. So when I drafted my running backs, or when I draft running backs, I'm looking to make sure that they have a high floor. And then I'm banking on the fact that wide receivers score the most points in the league, kind of thing. Like you can, the 25th or 35th wide receiver is still putting up numbers, kind of thing. So you can always find good wide receivers. So I want high floor running backs. And what scared me last week was that I wasn't sure what Clyde's floor was going to be.
So you were more scared about the floor versus the upside. Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
ultimately, like, it hasn't come to fruition yet, but I'm hoping that it does. It's like when you have Ridley, when you have Boyd, and then when you have Marquise Brown, you're hoping that you see a lot of targets for Boyd, right? Ridley's just an all-around, like, kind of star. And then you hope for the big plays out of Marquise Brown. If those three guys get you 20 points in a given week, and now both of your running backs get you 14, your quarterback kind of does what quarterback should do in fantasy, now you're looking pretty strong. And in years past, I've gotten to the point where, like, my running back floor was like, yo, this guy might score you 5 points, right? And that's a really scary place to be, because then you need Calvin Ridley to score you 35 points to kind of do it. So last week that was
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Last week, that was my biggest concern going into the matchup, was just seeing, like, okay, Clyde, this is your last chance to really show them. They brought in an all-pro caliber running back in his prime, who can still catch out the backfield, who's bigger than you for the goal line carries. What are you going to do with your back against the wall kind of thing? And he balled out. He did very well against a very strong Buffalo defense, which made me feel, okay, they're still going to give him his carries. And I think that even with those carries, that 16, 17 carries, we're looking at 14 fantasy points.
You know, Ryan, one type of game script that concerns me sometimes, at least when I watch Chris Carson, is like when the lead running back, when they start their drive, they start off with, you know, the number one. But by the time they get up to the other side of the field, that guy's a little bit tired and banged up. So I would just look for that with CEH. He's probably going to be leading, you know, the drive on other end of the field. But once CEH has, you know, had like 5, 6, 7 rushes, sometimes maybe in a row, that's when Bell might come in on the other side. So I would just look for that.
Let's just never forget that Andy Reid abandons the run relatively fast and is not always run heavy. So let's also don't forget that.
I think goal line work is going straight to Le'Veon too. I think CEH has been relieved of those duties.
But let's not forget Le'Veon Bell also serves more purposes in running.
Yeah, he's a good receiver. So I think once again, I think you could be confident starting both running backs and expecting double digit.
Like you're not starting Kareem Hunt. Even when Travis healthy, you're starting him.
Right.
Probably not
I think
RB1, but
yeah. But Ryan, I have a question for a segue. You have Hollywood Brown.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man.
How do you feel about him? And Joe, you're the owner of his quarterback. Something seems weird in this offense, and it's just not clicking. And we're not seeing the like we saw games where like Hollywood Brown was killing it, and then go a little bit silent. But Hollywood Brown's looking really pedestrian out there.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they're on a bye week this week, so
They are.
Hopefully they kind of patch some things up. Just a quick situation. He's getting all the air yards, right? Like his targets are on like deep ball, which, you know, it's all about accuracy, and he happens to have a quarterback who's not always accurate, and so it's like, okay, I mean, that's what will always be to any Ravens wide receiver's detriment until Lamar Jackson figures that part of his game out a little bit more. You know, he probably had good completion percentage last year, and he's going to complete passes. But when you throw the deep ball, we all know that it comes down to touch and accuracy. So if he's on, Hollywood Brown can give you 120 yards. If he's not on, then he's going to give you 14 yards. And I've seen the gift and the curse of that relationship.
My only contribution to that conversation is I can't remember what two defenses it was against, but 1 week Lamar Jackson struggled, and they were saying that that defense did the exact same scheme that the Titans did when they lost in the playoffs. They lost to the Titans, right?
Yep.
So I guess they copy and pasted that whole scheme and they struggled. So that was a little bit of a surprise. And it was another game where they said they literally have never seen that scheme before against Lamar Jackson. It was almost like a stack. It was like 3 people running. One would like stop here. The other guy would stop midway. The other one would be long ways. Like just it was some crazy scheme they said they've never seen before. So the league may be catching up a little bit of how to scheme against this offense because it's very unique. They're in, in tight end, 2 tight end formations and the pistol and stuff like that, a little bit different than most offenses. So you may see them adjusting to the adjustments, and he might be okay in the future, but we'll see.
I mean, speaking of somebody that had Hollywood Brown last year, it was a different year then because he was hurt. But the Ravens just typically aren't a pass-heavy offense. Hollywood Brown is somebody that's going to, 1 week he'll get you 30 points, maybe even more than that. But after that, he's like he could get you as little as 9 points, maybe even 7. Like Hollywood Brown is just, an unstable start.
And let me just segue that to another receiver who like either has like really big games or like really like low-key games that you're trying to figure out, like, do you consistently trust Tyler Lockett or not? Like, let's start looking at like that Seahawks-Cardinals game. Is he a start? Do you start Tyler Lockett in confidence? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I owned Tyler Lockett last year, and I had the gift and the curse of him also, where one game he would get all the love, and then the next game he wouldn't. And Russell Wilson has this weird knack for like making tight ends relevant enough to ruin your week, right? Like he'll throw to Will Dillsley, he'll throw to Jacob Hollister when Greg Olsen or Jimmy Graham are his number 1 tight end, right? Like he has no problem mixing it up. I think you have to start Tyler Lockett because he's their number 2 option, but you have to know that 1 week David Moore is going to go off. So I think you have to, off of name value and the production that he's had, he can get a 3-touchdown game. But outside of DK Metcalf, I don't feel too certain about any wide receiver on that Seattle squad. Justin, am I lying or am I good, Mr. DK?
Man, DK is most consistent on Seattle. And even I was just listening to a podcast with interview for Russell Wilson, and he was talking about when DK got drafted, the first thing he said was when we working, and they just been building their relationship ever since. So it's no accident that DK gets a lot of looks from Russell and produces consistently.
Josh, you miss him or?
Every day, man.
You
It's
want
hard.
that old thing back?
I mean, sometimes, you let that one get away, but, it's all right. You manage.
DK has no fewer than 90 receiving yards in any game this season, which is scary.
Yeah.
Now, if AB signs,
Nope, does nothing.
maybe.
Does nothing.
AB? Anything?
I don't think it does. If anything, it hurts Tyler Lockett. I don't think it does anything to DK. Not a thing.
Ask a Pats fan.
Yeah, not a thing. That boy's gonna get you in the end zone. He's at the end of the day, he's arguably just from a physical standpoint better than AB in literally every physical attribute. He's literally better than AB, and I think he has more of a chemistry with Russell Wilson. We don't know how conditioned AB is. Like being average, like being an athlete in like average circumstances, yeah, he's in great shape. Being in football shape, very much different. So I don't see AB coming in if he does come in, because don't forget they still have Josh Gordon on their roster, and we're still trying to figgue out when he might get reinstated.
No, we're not. Don't worry about Josh Gordon.
No.
Ace has a connection with Josh Gordon. Don't worry about him.
I mean,
I hope he comes back.
I think he comes back. Like I said, I think Randy Gregory just got reinstated, and he put his application in March. I think Josh Gordon did his later on, and I mean, he's not going to get reinstated this week because they're in like league meetings.
Yeah.
So I think by week 8, week 9, you get the person that you signed in the offseason as well. But I think DK continues to stay consistent. But my question, and kind of last on like this Seahawks Cardinals, is like, which running back do you trust? And like, who do you trust? Drake, who had a great week this week? Or do you trust Chase Edmonds, who previous to this week was really kind of like, oh, this might be a Chase Edmonds backfield? Like, help me understand that.
Keep trusting Man, keep trusting Drake. Even though the Cowboys make one person a Hall of Famer every week, keep trusting Drake.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I think Drake came out right after, 2 weeks ago? He had a really poor showing, and he got on Twitter, and he posted a picture of his face, and he said, like, show people this face when this man helps you end up winning your fantasy championship. And last year he came out and put his money where his mouth is. So I think Edmonds is always going to be like the perfect spell. He's going to take some love away from him. But if I have Kenyon Drake, I'm probably going to hold on to him and start him every week. Eugene, real quick, we're going to throw to Packers-Texans. And the reason we're coming there is because, what was it, pick 12 or pick 13? You went with my man, Aaron Jones. So how are you feeling about his production? How you feel about maybe any other players in this matchup?
I mean, the numbers say he's number 2, I think, or is he number 1? And Zeke is 2. I am the proud owner of Aaron Jones. He has been holding me down. He is probably the single reason I am 3-3. With the matchup in particular, I think he's going to feast. I think the Texans have been getting a little bit better on the defensive side of the ball, but I mean, he said it himself. He's just a better runner. He said he feels like he's a better runner. He feels like he could do more things on the field, and I am just chilling, saying, "Take me to the promised land, bro. I'm here. I'm here for Aaron Jones." I'm happy that Devontae is back. I think he's going to try to bounce back from last week. I don't think he drops a thing again for the rest of the season because Aaron Rodgers probably punched him in his face. I also have Aaron Rodgers too, who revisiting that roster mismanagement made me lose week 1 because I sat him for Phillip Rivers. Like, what was I doing? Who was I?
There?
Never again, Aaron. I'm so sorry. But I did appreciate now. Thanks to Ashton, the end zone celebration he did last week. That was pretty fun. But back to the matchup, I think Packers, they still know who they are. You know, the 2 turnovers kind of flipped the things on his head last week, but I think they get the job done. And to my boy's detriment, I love Deshaun. I think he's getting it together too. Brandon Cooks looks great for 2 weeks for the first time ever in a row. Still not sure what's going on with David Johnson, but I think you guys blow him out.
There we go. That's what I like to hear. Ironically enough, Brandon Cooks and David Johnson were member of the New Bedford Whalers during their 2016 championship run. Let's keep it moving. Justin, how do you feel about anyone on the Texans offense this week against the Packers?
Well, of course, Deshaun Watson, that's a must start. I think he's definitely finding his rhythm. A lot of people are saying to sit Darren Fells, the tight end, which looks like one of Deshaun's favorite targets. I would disagree. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game also. Those are 2 high-scoring passing offenses against 2 mediocre overall defenses. And I also have a sleeper in Randall Cobb, who has been pretty consistent the past, 3 weeks now with double-digit fantasy points. So
awesome. There we go. We're yeah, out of nowhere. Maybe he'll end up staying with the Packers after this. We're looking for some wide receiver help. Wouldn't mind having my guy Randall Cobb come back. Carolina at New Orleans. Joe, you got rid of Michael Thomas.
Yes.
Which is looking great from the standpoint that he hasn't played, but he's probably back in the. I mean, he's back in the lineup this week. Overall thoughts, Carolina, New Orleans.
I was actually looking to start Drew Brees because Michael Thomas is coming back. I know Drew has been somewhat of a disappointment, but you know he hasn't had his number 1 wide receiver, arguably top 3 wide receiver in the league since week 1. And on that note of Michael Thomas, he actually was a limited participant today with an ankle and hamstring injury. So keep monitoring that as the week goes on. Make sure that's not a problem. I'm sure it won't be.
How has he played 1 game?
I know. I'm actually also the Cook owner. He is the tight end for the Saints. I'm trying. What's his? I always forget his first name. Jared Cook. He's been somewhat of a disappointing tight end, 23 on the year. But In week 1, when Michael Thomas was playing essentially almost the whole game, he went 5 receptions for 80 yards, giving you a solid 13 points at a tight end position that's struggling this year. So I'm hoping that defense is going to have to really hone in on Michael Thomas again and pay attention to Alvin Kamara, and then Cooks can start eating again. So I'm hopeful.
Perfect. We're going to move to the AFC East. We got the Buffalo Bills and Justin's favorite team to talk about. Justin, any tidbits regarding the New York Jets?
Start everybody on the Bills. Get these Jets out of here, man. Is Gase fired yet? He's still there?
Gase is
Somehow he's still there. Somehow. He's got to have dirt on somebody at this point.
Play all the Bills players possible.
Sheesh. As you guys know, our producer is a faithful Jets fan, so he hates when Justin gets to talking about the New York Jets. Mahan,
He hasn't been happy from a football standpoint in years.
Yikes.
Respectfully.
Years. Centuries.
Ryan, actually, I want to get you in because we got to make sure we get some of your opinions as well. So I'm the owner of Zach Moss. Right now, he's dropped from 50% ownership down to 42, so it's trending down. Not doing too well. Do you drop Zach Moss?
I mean, not in our league for sure. From the standpoint for a few reasons, right? Like we're running backs galore, and you're literally one Singletary fumble or injury away from Moss kind of getting the lion's share of carries over there. Not to mention the fact that we're trending in like dynasty fashion. I'm not saying Zach Moss is definitely someone that you keep, but in a situation where he's a rookie, you got him on some probably very healthy value, right? You at least keep him around to try to figure it out, see if in any form of fashion Singletary falls out of good favor in that Bills rotation. So I don't know. I don't think there's anyone really on the waiver wire or the free agent list right now that makes it worthwhile to cut Zach Moss. That's just my opinion.
Got you.
Real quick, Justin hates the Jets, but someone who might love the Jets is Mahan, who has pretty much their only fantasy relevant player, Jamison Crowder. Mahan, talk to us about Jamison Crowder and his impact on your team this year.
I mean, Jamison Crowder has been a shock for my squad. I mean, I think where my squad has done well is finding value in the later rounds, aside from, the APs of the world who will put like 8 points on my bench on a weekly basis. I got Jonnu Smith in, the second to last round or maybe even the last round. And Jamison Crowder is somebody I found value in the later rounds, especially with dropping, 25 points last week. Jamison Crowder is somebody that, I feel confident starting and, maybe not, in the tier of Galladay or Godwin in terms of name value, but in terms of production, I think he's definitely in that conversation.
Got it. Perfect.
I got a question actually for the Jet supporters or anybody that actually pays attention to them. Is it actually time to give LaMichael Perrine some looks and just let Frank Gore relax a little bit?
Ryan,
I mean, what do they lose from giving Perrine touches? Like, Adam Gase is definitely gone after the season. It's not like they're fighting for a playoff spot. They might as well see what they have in the younger members of their roster.
Yeah, I picked him up this week, and he got me 5.6 fantasy points, which is actually, honestly, being on the Jets team, better than I was actually expecting out of a running back, especially when the way that Gase has kind of been coaching, he's just giving the ball to the ageless one to Frank Gore, and like Frank Gore will go like 20 carries for 46 yards, like it's like he's giving him all the love, and Frank's just old. I mean,
or Todd Gurley, because that's what he did last week.
Yeah, something on his Gurley, right? But Gurley's getting touchdowns. Thank you very much. But so maybe if they give the love to someone else, we could see some benefit from it. I mean, I sure hope so. I would sure love that. And I think that if there is a Jets running back to own, then you got to go with LaMichael Perrine. That's what I'm thinking.
Are the Jets the New York Knicks of football?
1,000%.
Same city.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense.
Can't get out of their own way. Similar to the New York Mets. Jets, Mets, Knicks. Can't get out of their own way.
If you go to New York, if you're a Knicks fan, you're a Jets fan, and you're a Mets fan. It's just how they roll.
3 strikes and you're out. Ashton, we're coming back to you for the NFC least discussion. Dallas heads to Washington to take on the football team. Anyone you do or don't like in that matchup?
And I don't like the Cowboys, I'll tell you that. But I think Scary Terry destroys that secondary. You might even see Logan Thomas become fantasy relevant again. He tore up the Eagles week 1. He went off last week. And I think you see him as a sleeper type of tight end pickup. So, Ryan, if you're looking for a tight end, I know you don't have one right now, Logan Thomas. If you look even just from a target perspective, I think he's maybe top 5 or top 6 in targets for tight ends. Let me just give you an actual stat on that. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Ashton,
Yeah,
we'll throw right back to you. Oh, you got it.
Logan Thomas has 36 compared to 53 Travis Kelce, 47 Darren Waller, the baller, Zach. Oh, it hurts because he's on my roster, and George Kittle. So he's holding it down. I mean, he gets looks. He averages 6 targets a game. I think he's a sleeper pick, and I think Scary Terry is just going to destroy that Cowboys secondary. And I think the Cowboys just going to continue to be the Cowboys. They have turmoil. People don't think the coaches can coach. People are talking about should they have gotten Mike McCarthy. It's horrible. It's horrible. The season looks bad for them boys, and I'm thoroughly happy and pleased as an Eagles fan. But I truly hope the Washington football team.
There you go.
Good man.
The Washington football team definitely comes out with the dub, and I see it as possible. Even though the Cowboys have a talented roster, they're just a team of talent. They're not a talented team.
Things you hate to hear if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. Talented roster, but not a talented team. Joe, we finished up last week talking about the impact that Dalton would kind of have on this offense. And it seems to be vast, man. Are you in any way fading any players that are on this Dallas Cowboys offense at this point if Andy Dalton continues this sort of trend?
I still say it's early. You would imagine he hasn't had much reps in practice with these players, but these are really good wide receivers.
Yep.
So I wouldn't give up just yet. Exercise a little patience. Someone mentioned it before in the last podcast that Dalton has been solid before on another team. He's never had a team like this, and the fact that teams have to really come in the box a little bit with Zeke. That's just never going to change unless Zeke gets hurt. So I say exercise some patience, and they might just get it together. Not to the level of Dak, but I think that they can come back to relevance.
The Cowboys?
The Cowboys wide receivers.
Oh, okay.
Good man, Joe.
Joe, we are moving on to the last and final game of this Week 7 matchups. We have the San Francisco 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo versus the New England Patriots, which without Brady, it's not as much of a story, but, it's still – he was supposed to be the Patriots guy of the future. They kept Tom Brady. They shipped him off. He goes to a Super Bowl. Patriots, no Brady, no Garoppolo, starting Cam Newton. What do you see? Who do you see as fantasy relevant this week? Niners.
I'll jump in real quick.
Yeah, we're starting with you.
Okay, the Patriots defense is someone that I'm resting right now. They weren't my pick because my waivers didn't go through. But
Who'd you have? I'm interested. Who'd you have?
The Bills.
They're still there.
No, against the Jets. They're not still there.
Oh, my bad.
Bellamy has them.
And then the Eagles versus the Giants. But the reason why I say the Patriots defense is Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's going to be 100% again this week. Their offense struggled once Raheem Mostert went down. As I was watching that game, they just weren't the same. And we just know that the Patriots, their defense is solid. They're the number 5 defense on the league in the season so far, and they face the Seahawks and the Chiefs, and they're still number 5. So I think with Raheem Mostert going down and Jimmy Garoppolo not being at 100%, I think it'd be a good start at defense.
Mahan, any thoughts? Niners, Patriots.
Honestly, I think that game is going to be ugly. It's going to really depend on not only like Jimmy Garoppolo's ability to produce in the passing game, but I don't know. I'd say if I had to pick a team, I'd probably go with the Patriots, just based on who's the more reliable quarterback.
Yeah, no, and I think that's an interesting spot to kind of like stick on for a second. Cam, for the first few games of the season, looked, like MVP Cam kind of discussion sort of thing. And after COVID, last week's matchup, he was off, right? Even that fourth down throw to end the game, they have the chance to keep the drive going, and he just completely misses N'Keal Harry on a throw that like a starting NFL quarterback should make. And so he you know how Cam gets, right? He didn't make any excuses or anything like that. But Ashton, do you think that Cam in any way is going to revert back to the Cam that made it okay for Carolina to drop him off? Or do you think that the first few games of the season is who Cam Newton is?
I think it's just a game that shows that you need practice time and rep time with your teammates.
Yep.
And you can't go into a game without any practice, right? And the Patriots with COVID and all they were dealing with the past 2 weeks, it just showed. It showed they didn't have rhythm, chemistry. They started off slow, and that just is honestly attributed to just practice time. They didn't have that, and so I think it's just an anomaly of Cam also being on the COVID reserve list, so him not being able to actually practice, and then just the Patriots just in general as a team not being able to practice because of the many different COVID cases that they had. I think that just attributes to them not being as prepared as you would see a Bill Belichick team prepared for their opponent. So once again, I think it's an anomaly. I think you go back to seeing Cam hitting his receivers. I think once again, you know he's going to run the ball, so it's definitely going to be a problem for San Francisco, even barring their injuries. I know San Francisco has a good defense, but barring their injuries, I think the Patriots have a good game plan and a script, and you have Bill Belichick. He's a mastermind, so I think they come out with the win. With San Francisco, I think you look at Deebo Samuel's continuing to be productive. George Kittle I feel like George Kittle might be one of those players who the Patriots hone in on. And, the Patriots do a good job of taking out your best player.
I need that.
And I think that happens to George Kittle to some extent. I think George Kittle is still, you start him in your lineup. Like, he's still going to get his. But you're not going to see last week's performance, hopefully. And what I'm hoping for is Jarrett McKinnon having a good fantasy day, because I have to start him and Melvin Gordon because Dalvin Cook is on the bye week. So
hang it out, bro.
Let's go, Jet.
Patriots did Darren Waller filthy. I will never forget that.
Yeah, they locked him up.
Man.
Oh, is that so? Okay. I got a chance against Justin. That's just the optimism.
Kittle's going to eat. He was going to eat.
I don't think he eats. The Patriots do a very good job against stopping tight ends or just taking out your best player. They do it with every team. The second player would do well. Bill Belichick's like, I'm taking away you.
That's his philosophy, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's George Kittle, because they don't do anything without George Kittle there. And I think that's what you saw when Jimmy Garoppolo was out. You also didn't have George Kittle, so their offense looked stale.
They also distinct, so there's that.
Keep praying.
Also, before I forget, because I didn't mention it earlier, I'm starting Derrick Henry. Like, he's a must start every week, in case anybody needed to know.
No,
yeah,
shut up. No one's questioning that. No one's questioning that.
No one asked that.
I didn't say anything about him earlier, so.
Not ASOL's question. I'm thinking of not starting Derrick Henry.
Yeah. It's okay to be humble.
Maybe it's a 2-team league. I don't know.
Also, just real fast, quick stats on the Patriots. They are 28th in the tight ends average points against the Patriots, 5.2 points.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Joe, you are facing Justin this week, man. We're about to end the show. Do you have anything you want to say to your opponent before we kick off week 7?
Don't.
Justin, I see you waving, man. I know you fear no man, but does Joe's team pose any threat to you this week?
What is he, 1-5?
Wow.
Oh.
In the wise words of Lil Wayne, show me my opponent.
Hey, Justin's calling his shots, saying he's putting Joe's season to rest. Mahan, you got anything to add, my man?
We're on to Auntie Anthony.
There you go. We're on to Auntie Anthony. Eugene, first time joining, man. How do we do? You feel comfortable?
I think you guys do a phenomenal job. I just want to say start T. Higgins every week, no matter what. I meant to say that earlier. I did, and then I lost by 3. I'm ready to go this week. Joe, man, stand up for yourself. Your season on the line, brother.
Oh, ain't nobody scared. I just ain't enough. I was first about to say good luck, but I wouldn't mean that, so I ain't got nothing.
Because after that most time last week, that one hurt me, man. No, man. No.
I was acting in an honorable fashion. I'm not going to feel bad for that, but I'm also not scared of Justin. And I look forward to see what the results are going to be.
Who's going to start at quarterback? That's my
me.
question.
I mean,
yeah.
Terry Bridgewater.
Terry.
Yo, you might have a shot. You might have a shot, Joe, since Justin gutted his team.
I don't like the light skin on light skin violence. That's all.
Well, folks, this is the first time that we've gone matchup by matchup. So if you have any comments, concerns, or thoughts, please leave them with us. We're trying to improve the show every week. Ashton, go ahead.
Nah, we good. This episode was long enough. I don't need to keep it long.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week within the Indecision.